always mess this up. So do that. It's stuck looking at me. All right, here we go. So these are the last 3 macro questions that you guys are going to be working, that I had you guys work on, simply because they're just topics that we haven't covered yet. So we'll jump into micro. The next one will be a micro. I will still put the FRQs that I plan on going over the next class up on Google Classroom, so at least you'll know where we're going to be and you can kind of follow along with the reviews, or if you want to prepare them ahead of time, whatever you want to do. Okay. So that's that. So here we go. We are on 2018. I believe it is number 3. Can you guys hear my dog barking in the background? Is it really annoying?
We can hear it, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that loud. You're good.
Well, it's annoying me.
It feels a little bit homey.
All right, so we're on 2018, number 3. Give me 1 second to go muzzle my dog. I'll be right back. All right. Hopefully that works. Can't guarantee anything. My kids just got home. They're outside playing. All the windows are open because it's beautiful out. So the dog likes to bark. All right, here we go. 2018, number 3. Now, this is a tricky one. Okay, this is going to make you weren't able to figure it out initially. Maybe you went to the scoring guidelines, but this goes all the way back to the beginning of the year with comparative advantage. And this is a unique comparative advantage in terms of the fact that it is a input comparative advantage, right? So for this one, it's not other goes over, it's other goes under. Okay, so let's look at it. So countries face trade-offs between producing consumer goods and producing capital goods. Country X takes 1 hour to produce a unit of consumer goods and 2 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. Country Y takes 2 hours to produce a unit of consumer goods and 4 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. Which country has a comparative advantage in the production of consumer goods, and explain? So this one is real tricky to kind of start off in terms of how we're going to get set up. Okay, so the first one, A, is asking us for comparative advantage in production of consumer goods. Okay, so if we remember this, and this is going to be kind of funky to do, but if we remember, we have 2 different goods, right? So, or we have 2 different countries. We have country X, okay, country Y. All right, now, normally we want to figure out, well, how much can they produce? And in this case, we're given some kind of funky information. So we know it's hours per output, right? So for us, I'm going to set it up like this. We know that the maximum number of consumer goods, hold on, let me put this up here. So this is going to be consumer, capital goods. Do you guys remember the little chart that we made, or at least that we used to use, okay, when we were doing comparative advantage? All right, so for consumer goods, we know that 1 consumer good is going to be equal to 2 hours, right? So it's going to take 2 hours to produce a consumer good, and then it will take 1 capital good is going to be equal to 4 hours, okay, for country X. And the reason why we know that is this. It says country X, it takes country X 1 hour to produce a unit of consumer goods and 2 hours to produce, wait, what did I do wrong? Oh, I did do that whole thing wrong. I thought it was a half hour. Let me see. Just double check myself. No, I did that right. Takes 1 hour to produce a unit of consumer goods. Sorry about that. So one consumer good is equal to 1 hour. And one capital good is 2 hours. Okay. Now let's go down to country Y. Okay, so country Y, one consumer good is going to be equal to, country Y takes 2 hours to produce a unit of consumer goods and 4 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. Okay, so 2 hours, and we have one capital good is equal to 4 hours. Okay, now we know that when we were looking at this in class, we would normally, Normally we would take it and find the per unit opportunity cost of producing each thing. Okay, when we look at this, we now know that, well, it's other goes under. So one consumer good is going to be equal to, well, what? Other goes under. So we take the 2 hours for the capital good, put it underneath the consumer good. So one consumer good is going to be equal to 1/2 of a capital good. Okay. And the same thing kind of holds true on this side. We know that one consumer good is also going to be equal to 1/2 of a capital good. And the reason why is because of other goes under. So in terms of producing, okay, in terms of producing the good, they both are going to take the same amount of time. So the answer for this question is that no country, okay, because they're both equal to 1/2. All right, so neither country X or country Y has a comparative advantage in the time it takes to produce consumer goods because they both give up the same amount of time or the same amount of capital goods to produce a consumer good. Okay, that one's kind of tricky. I know it's a little funky to look at. All right, but if you have any questions, just feel free to stop. Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, all right, let's check out B. Okay, B is going to ask us. B is asking us for the unemployment rate. Okay, so remember the unemployment rate, all right, is just equal to the number of people unemployed going to be over the labor force. The space force. All right, over the labor force. Who is Mitt? All right, so in order to figure out the unemployment rate, okay, it's the number of people unemployed over the labor force. Sorry about that. And then it's times 100. All right, so in this case, the number of people we have unemployed. So let's look at the chart, okay? It says we have 180,000 people employed. We have 10,000 people frictionally unemployed, 5,000 people structurally unemployed, 5,000 people cyclically unemployed, and then we have 100,000 people not counted in the labor force, okay? So in this case, we know that we have 180,000 people that are employed, which means that we have 20,000 people unemployed. We know that the size of the labor force is both those who are employed and those who are unemployed and looking for work, right? And they kind of fit all those criteria. So if we have 20,000 people unemployed, 180,000 people employed, that means that the size of the labor force, okay, in this case is going to be 200,000 people. So we take 20,000, okay, and we put it over 200,000, okay, times 100, and the answer is going to be 10%. Okay, so we have a 10% unemployment rate. Okay, so our answer is going to be 10%. All right, let's look at C. Okay, C is the labor force participation rate it's asking us for. Okay, so labor force participation rate is equal to the labor force and then it's going to be over the population times 100. All right. So in this case, what we're looking at here is this. We know that there are 200,000 people in the labor force, right? So all right. So we know that there are 200,000 people in the labor force. Okay. We know that the population in this case is going to be equal to 300,000 people, right? So we have 100,000 people who are not counted in the labor force, but they're part of the population. So it's going to be 200,000, okay, people divided, or 200,000 people in the labor force divided by the population of 300,000, okay, times 100, and it's going to give us 0.667. So for this case, you could say that the participation rate was either 67% or 66.7%. Okay. And then the last one for D, I'll put D up here in the corner. Okay, D is just asking us to draw a productions possibilities curve with the current state of this country's economy. All right. Okay, now, actually, I should say this. Okay, because we know that it is not a constant opportunity cost, and I know you don't have to draw anything, but since it's not a constant opportunity cost, you should have a more kind of bowed out look on your PPC, okay? And as long as you put point Z inside the curve somewhere, okay, you should be fine. This is going to be consumer, and this is going to be capital goods, okay? And then this is our PPC. Questions about 2018, number 3. I know it was a little tricky, some stuff we haven't had to do a lot of, but that's why I chose it, to make you guys kind of brush up on some of the earlier skills before we go into the exam. Questions? All right, cool, good talk. So we'll clear this out, and then we'll start the next one. So, (2011) number 1. All right, now this was a bit of a long one. Okay, this is the longest of the 3 that I gave you. Okay, so 2011 number 1 says this. All right, so to start, we know that we're in a short run recession. Okay, so that's just information that we're going to get right off the bat. Again, I like to kind of keep that information for me handy while I'm doing these. So this way I can, just kind of look back at it, and I don't have to go all the way back to the text to get what I'm looking for. This one wants us to draw a Phillips curve, both the short run and the long run Phillips curve, okay, showing our economy in recession. You would think after doing this like almost 30 times that I'd be a lot better at drawing on the computer, but that is not the case. All right, so we got LRPC. We have inflation on the vertical axis. We have unemployment on the horizontal axis. And then we have our SRPC. Okay, so we know that the economy is currently in a short run recession. So we have to put it in a point on the Phillips curve that could show that recession. And we have to label that point A. So remember, recession, high rates of unemployment, low rate of output, typically price levels lower. So we're going to be to the right of the long run Phillips curve. Remember, long run Phillips curve represents that natural rate of unemployment, right? So technically, we know that this could be 5% unemployment. A recession means that we have a greater than natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so that's kind of a little indicator for us there. Okay, next one is going to be B. Okay, and what B is asking us to do, let me read it here. It says draw a correctly labeled graph of the aggregates model in recession and show each of the following. So this is just your basic, like, show me you know how to draw the aggregates model. Hopefully for all of you, this was probably the easiest portion of this question. I would imagine that most of you at this point are sick of drawing aggregates models and just macro graphs in general. But it's kind of the point. I've done it so much that it's kind of like memory, hopefully, at this point. We'll see. All right, so it's in a recession. That means that equilibrium has to be to the left of long-run aggregate supply. All right, now we'll come back and use this graph for, I believe, the next question. I might ask us for D. Okay, but this is what our market looks like in recession. Okay. All right, C. To balance the federal budget, suppose that the government decides to raise income taxes while maintaining the current level of government spending. On the graph down in part B, show the effect of the increase in taxes. Label the new equilibrium output price levels Y2 and PL2 respectively. Okay, so it wants to know, well, what's going to happen as a result of us increasing taxes? We know that if we increase taxes, consumer spending is going to decrease. Okay, consumer spending decreases, so too does aggregate demand. All right, and if decreases. And if aggregate demand decreases, price level will decrease. And so I'm just going to write these out. Okay, so if output decreases and price level decreases, unemployment is also going to get worse, right? Unemployment is going to increase because we're producing less, therefore there's less of a need for employment. All right, so that's what our C is going to be, the red line here. Okay, so I'll just say C is in red. All right, let's check out D. Assume that the Federal Reserve uses monetary policy to stimulate the economy. What open market operations? Okay, so let's check this out. D, I'll put D up here. Okay, so D1 is asking for what operations we should use to stimulate the economy. The Fed should buy bonds. Okay, Fed should buy bonds. The Fed buys bonds. That means that the Fed is giving out cash to banks. Banks then will lend those excess reserves, therefore increasing the money supply, so on and so forth. Right. Now, two is using a correctly labeled graph. Show how the policy impacts, all right, the money market. We have done this again a ton over the past couple of weeks, so this should be kind of memory at this point. All right, so it's nominal interest rate on the vertical axis, okay, quantity of money on the horizontal axis. We have a downward sloping demand for money. Our money supply is vertical, so we'll label that MS1. Our new money supply is also going to be vertical. We'll label that MS2. We know that interest rates at initial equilibrium is going to be where the MS1 intersects with the demand for money. So again, we increase the money supply. We go from MS1 to MS2. Okay, the nominal interest rate is going to drop as a result of the increase in the money supply. So that is it for D2. Now E. Okay, E is just a regular text question, and E is going to ask us for our long run adjustment, right? So we want to know what is going to happen if there is no policy action. The first question asks what is going to happen to aggregate supply and why. So in this question, we know that aggregate supply, okay, will increase. Okay, it's going to increase, and the reason why it's going to increase is because wages will fall and as a result, production will increase due to a decrease in production costs. Remember, when we talked about this in class, we said this is the good old like Great Depression, why hasn't anything happened kind of scenario, right? We just say, okay, recession's bad. We'll get out of this. Things will get better. No policy action. We're not going to borrow money and spend on deficit to save the economy. Things will eventually get better. So the idea is that as more and more people become unemployed, those of us who are still employed will renegotiate to take lesser wages. And therefore, companies, as wage costs decrease and other input costs decrease, companies should technically ramp up production. The only issue with this is if no one's buying any goods, you're not going to increase production of goods that people aren't buying. Okay? All right. And now finally for E2 is in the long run, what will happen to the natural rate of unemployment? Okay, the natural rate of unemployment will remain unchanged. And the reason why it's going to remain unchanged is because we didn't see a decrease in technology or a decrease in resources. We just have a lack of utilization of those available resources. So we are underproducing. It's not that we can't produce at all. Okay, that is it for 2011, number one. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So now let's go on to the last one here. And the last one we have is 2017, number 3. Okay. And let's look at it. 2017, number 3, lets us know that we have an economy in full. Hold on, I got to bring it up. We have an economy that is at full employment. Okay. And the country produces 2 types of goods, consumer goods and capital goods. Okay, so the first one is we have to draw a PPC with consumer goods on the horizontal axis and capital goods on the vertical axis. Indicate a point on your graph labeled X that represents full employment and a possible combination in which both goods are being produced. Okay, so we need to draw a PPC for this one. Now, this one is where I'm going to kind of let you know that you need to be specific on how you draw the PPC. And the reason being is this. If the question starts out by saying that you're in full employment, it wants to know if you understand the difference between full employment, okay, and maximum employment, right? And we talked about this when we did the PPC. We know that full employment is 95%, right? There's a roughly about a 5% rate of unemployment. So technically, you can have more than the natural rate of unemployment. So we always want to leave a space, okay, between the PPC and the top of our axes, right? So we know on vertical, our horizontal axis, we have consumer goods. Okay, on our vertical axis, we have capital goods. Okay, and what do we have to label it? Okay, we have to label this X. Okay, so this is point X in our economy. And this just lets us know that on the PPC, we actually have room for improvement, that we can flex the production's possibilities curve outward to the right. All right, good. B, assume that there is an increase in the country's national savings. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the loanable funds market showing the change in real interest rate from the increase in savings. Okay, so we'll put B over here. Okay, so now we have to draw our loanable funds market. Remember, loanable funds market is just a regular supply and demand graph. Okay, so we have the demand for loans, the supply for loans, okay, quantity of loanable funds on our horizontal axis, real interest rate on our vertical axis. And now we want to know, well, what is going to happen inside of our market if private savings increases? If private savings increases, that means that people are going to be putting more money in the bank, which means that banks are going to have a greater rate of reserves now. If banks have a greater rate of reserves, then the supply of loanable funds is going to increase. If the supply of loanable funds increases, that means that the interest rate or the real interest rate will fall. Okay, so that is B. That's all we had to do for B. Now, C, and this is where it gets kind of tricky. C, on the same graph from above, sorry, on the same graph from part A, show another point labeled Z that represents full employment and a new combination of consumer goods and capital goods consistent with the increase in the country's national savings. Okay, so we're going to do two things here. We're going to kind of answer, so I'll put C here in red. Okay, we're going to kind of answer two questions. Now, this is the answer for C. Ooh, that was awful. Look at that. Okay, so the reason why we're going to put Z closer to capital goods, but keep it on that line is this. If people increase savings, real interest rates are going to decrease, which means that now people are going to start becoming borrowers. This also means businesses. Businesses are going to increase investment in capital stock. They're going to purchase more capital goods. Therefore, in the United States economy, we're going to have to reallocate resources. We will take some resources away from consumer goods, reallocate them to capital goods, and we'll produce more capital goods because that is what we want at this time. Remember, allocative efficiency is producing along the PPC, but it's producing what people want. Okay, so in this case, going from X to Z would make our economy more allocatively efficient. All right, now for D, D is going to be asking this. The question for D is what is going to happen to, all right, our long run aggregate supply curve? Is it going to shift right? Is it going to shift left? Is it going to remain the same? Okay, and the answer for this specific question is that the LRAS will increase, okay? It's going to shift to the right. And the reason being is because of increase in capital formation leads to increases in capital stock, which will lead to innovation in production, okay? Okay, so what is that going to do? It's going to, over time, not right away, and this is important. This is why we did not shift the productions possibilities curve out initially. Later on, the productions possibilities curve will shift to the right. But for now, we have to produce more capital goods, and companies investing in capital goods are going to buy more, which is going to lead to capital formation, which typically leads to innovation in fields or areas of production. We're going to find a way to produce things more efficiently. If we can do that, then our output in total or in aggregate will increase across the economy. So the LRAS is going to increase as a result of an increase in capital stock or an abundance of capital. Okay? All right. That's all I got for today, guys. Okay? I will cancel the spotlight. The whiteboard is off. That is all I have for you. What I will do today later on or after we finish class here is I will post the micro FRQs that I plan on going over on Wednesday. And if you have any questions, I have office hours. But again, as a reminder, if you can't make those office hours, just shoot me an email. I can always meet or talk to any of you at any time. All right? Hope you guys are all well. Enjoy the weather while it's beautiful outside. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
See you later, Mr. McSweeney. Thank you.
Yep, thank
Later.
you. Wow, look at that, guys. We ended right on time. Get out of here. Look at that.
That's perfection.
It is perfect. It's efficient. It's efficient.
That's good.
That was a joke. I miss them. I don't have any more dad. I can't make dad jokes to anybody. My kids are too young.
Have a good one, McLean.
Later, guys. See you soon. You guys have any questions or are you just asleep at the wheel? All right. I'm going to end the meeting. Have a good one.